Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm just refraining from using my camera due to the very early morning in Bonn here at 1 a.m. So I would provide a bit of an overview and about the reporting initial report and the agreed electronic format. If you go to the next slide. So it's basically the initial report related to party-specific information related to the requirements that have been elaborated in the Glasgow decisions from paragraph 18A to F. And also the cooperative approaches information which contained in paragraph 18G to I. And also the updated initial report. And the annual information that will feed into the submission portal. And in this session, I'm not getting into the regular information or the aspects related to the review or the CARP and the database. So the regular information is, as we all know, that it's quite important, like these numbers will be put into the structured summary, and that's where the accounting and the corresponding adjustment happens. But the scope of the presentation today, we would limit to the initial report, the updated initial report, and the annual information. If you skip 2 slides. So the initial reports, the CMA4 in Sharm el-Sheikh has agreed the outlines for the initial and the updated initial reports for the cooperative approach. These are available in an electronic format by end of January. There was a mandate from the Sharm el-Sheikh for the Secretariat to provide an interim CARP, so which has been published in the cooperative implementation webpage, wherein electronic format is available. Which includes basically the requirements of paragraph 18 of the Glasgow. And then in addition to that, the Secretariat has been asked to organize a workshop on the potential challenges of the participating parties that may face in addressing different elements of the initial report and the support for the identification of related capacity building needs. So the coming next Monday until Wednesday, in the hybrid format, there would be the schedule and information is already available in the cooperative implementation webpage, wherein that we would be discussing on elements related to the initial report and the AEF. And then followed to that in this slide, which we have not included, is on the May 17th and 18th. There will be a virtual workshop as part of the capacity building effort on aspects related to, again, initial report and the AEF. The Sharm el-Sheikh mandate has also requested parties to submit their views on the potential challenges in the preparation of the reporting on elements listed in the initial report. It's on an ongoing basis, but until today, we do not have any submissions being received until yet. And then based on this workshop on the 24th to 26th, the Secretariat is mandated to prepare a technical paper to be considered by the SUBSTA in its 58th session. And in the end of the year, like I think in the slide, with no official status has become as with unofficial status. So it's to develop a manual, which is something similar to the ETF guidance for Article 13, with no official status, to have a manual by end of the year that would contain illustrative elements of the information for the initial report, updated initial report, and the regular report. So this manual would be prepared by Q4 of 2023. If you go to the next slide. So this is the format which is currently available in the interim CARP page, where parties could download and fill in and submit this form. the party and the NDC genuine information is being included. And if you go to the next slide. So basically the initial report templates that are being published has 4 parts. The first and foremost is about the participation responsibilities, on how the party ensures that it's a party to the Paris Agreement and the NDC related information. These are like straightforward information. It's easy to fetch these information from different data sources that even already exist within the UNFCCC. Then the third element within the first part of the initial report is in relation to how the party ensures that it has arrangements in place for authorizing the use of ITMOs. This is more about the legal nature of the ITMO, who within the party would be responsible for authorizing. And then like we also have, for example, in 6.4, like some countries may identify the designated national authority that have been identified. Like as on date today, we have about 35 identified national authorities. We do not know whether every country would be using the same entity to also as an institution to authorize. Then there are issues related to authorization. The format and the revocation is continued to be discussed in the upcoming Substra session in Bonn that will be discussed. And then the part 1 also needs for the submitting party to ensure that it has arrangements in place for tracking its ITMOs. Like, as you know, that a party has to designate a registry. And this registry, there could be some situations where an using party might be using only the mechanism registry for ITMOs. Some countries might do have their national registry, its relationship, whether there are still conversations going on between what functions does the international registry does, whether it's purely looking at the accounting amounts or it's a transactional registry, etc. But still, the party has to ensure that it has its arrangements in place to track ITMO so as to avoid any potential double counting, etc. And then there are some administrative things like whether the party has submitted the most recent national inventory report, and then how the party ensures the participation contributes to the NDC LETS. Particularly when it comes to LETS, if it has submitted one from a country. If you go to the next one. So this is the second part of the template, which is basically about the description of the party's NDC. So it's more like in terms of the biennial transparency report, more in relation to paragraph 64. Here, when this requirements has been drafted, it was always presumed that the initial report would be submitted prior to the BTR. And once one has to make sure that the submissions that are contained in the initial report are consistent with the BTR. So here in the information related to the targets, the description, the time frame, scope coverage, and other relevant sectors categories, and also to the intention of the use of the cooperative approach, and any updates or clarification to that of the previously reported information, like, for example, recalculation of inventory data, or providing information on the greater detail on the methodologies that are used, or potentially also on the use of the cooperative approach. If you go to the next slide. The third bit within the initial report is in relation to the information on the ITMO metrics, methods for applying corresponding adjustments, and the method for quantification, like ITMO metrics, if it is on GAG ITMOs, then like GAG metric with indicators and GHG NDCs, and it also covers when it comes on non-GHG, those relevant information would be provided. Then to elaborate on the method that would be used to apply for corresponding adjustments. And then we know that the NDCs are predominantly single year. And there are NDCs which are multi-year NDCs. So again, here there are multiple choices that is provided within those two single year and multi-year NDC types. So herein that the method of corresponding adjustments is quite important, because this establishes the representativeness and the use, the representativeness of the use, and also the engagement with the Article 6. And then in terms of providing the information related to corresponding adjustments, also provides, like, for example, if it is for budget, then you need to provide the information related to how do you calculate this budget and trajectory, the starting balance and the final balance, and year by year. And then this is more like, this is an information that is used as a comparator number in comparison to the different options that needs to be followed. And then to provide the quantification if the country has a policy measure types of NDC, then also the existing guidance from SHRM has provided how it could be undertaken, and those needs to be elaborated in the initial report in the specific area of the initial report. And the final part of the initial report, if you go to the next slide. So this is the fourth part of the initial report. This is in relation to the information on the ITMO metrics, method for applying corresponding adjustments, and the method for quantification of the NDCs. So here the copy of the for each cooperative approach. Sorry for being tired now. So the fourth one is in relation to the replication. Like, so this needs to be submitted for each of the cooperative approaches. Here in the copy of authorization by the participating party needs to be provided. People who have took part in the working group on the 19th, like I think we heard from countries example saying that the need for the attachment of the authorization as part of the host country obligation. And then if, for example, a country has more than one cooperative approach, then the same form like this needs to be cut, copy, pasted, and elaborated for those different cooperative approaches. So within this initial report template of components 1 to 4, most of the cases that the 1 to 3 components might be more static, and this would be replicated depending on the different types of cooperative approach. And then if there is a new additional cooperative approach being included, then maybe subsequent changes in the earlier part might be needed. And then within the description of the cooperative approach, the duration, expected mitigation, and authorized entities needs to be elaborated. So herein, like, for example, in terms of cooperative approaches for CORSIA, you have to identify the end user, which could be an airline company, is also could be an authorized entity. And then you need to provide, like, how does the information related to how it ensures that there is no net increase in the global emissions, the quality of the mitigation outcomes, and if there are, if the type of the mitigation activity has potential for any reversals, then how to minimize the risk of the reversals should also needs to be elaborated in this part of the initial report. And in addition to that, there are other information related to this cooperative approach should also be included here. on aspects related to negative environmental and social impacts, issues related to the 11th preamble or paragraph of the Paris Agreement, link with SD objectives, and whether or not if there are any resources being assigned towards adaptation or for overall mitigation of global emissions. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, I would be quickly running through. I know this is a scene setting, and then it'd be more interesting to listen from countries. So this is about the AEF, the agreed electronic format. If you go to the next one. Yeah, so this in accordance with paragraph 20A of the CMA3, it provides the agreed electronic format wherein the annual information on the authorization of ITMO for towards the achievement of NDC, the information on related to the authorization, first transfer, acquisition, holding, cancellation, etc. So like it's a summarizing, it requires to provide the annual information on these things. So as we know that as per the decisions from Glasgow, the information needs to be submitted on an annual basis, and it has to be submitted before the 15th April on a calendar year for the transactions and other like basically authorization, first transfer, or any transactions needs to be reported for that calendar year before 15th April. And it should also include, like we also know that there are times where you would have different informations, like elements that have been or the transactions that have been undertaken in one calendar year, but they might be coming from different, the underlying reductions might have happened in different monitoring periods, etc. So this is where the agreed electronic format is where the real consistency check is being undertaken. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is like in terms of providing, this is the metadata information related to the cooperative approach itself, whether or not the authorization has been provided for other international mitigation purposes, the year in which the mitigation has occurred, the sector and activity type, and the unique identifier. So this is pretty much like provides the overall broad information related to the information on the cooperative approach itself, and also the participating entity, and also the reductions that are associated with that particular cooperative approach in a given year. But as always, we know that these transactions, like this, provides a snapshot on an ongoing basis on the aggregate number of users and transactions, etc. We go to the next slide. Yeah, this again, like the information can be classified in three main blocks, like actions performed with ITMOs, holding, and then information on the ITMOs reported in the previous points. If you go to the next slide. So as we know that, like, for example, in respect to Article 6.4, many of the informations that are needed to be produced could be fetched from the information that is available within the mechanism information system. So the design of the AEF is to serve for the purpose of the Article 6 database. Like I think the essential, the essentiality and the crucial need of the AEF and its relevance, I think I elaborated earlier. So we could go to the next slide. The next one, please. Yeah, so this is just like the final last but one slide, which I already indicated earlier. So this is the work program in relation to the initial report and the AEF. The hybrid workshop, and then the virtual workshop in the middle of May 17th, 18th, and the technical papers will feed as an input for further consideration on these by Substa in its 58th session. And the practitioner's manual in relation to initial report would be prepared by the Secretariat by the end of the year. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patient listening. Back to you.